Imagine for just a second that you are standing in a perfectly empty room.
Right.
Like when you close your eyes and you try to picture the universe at its most fundamental, absolute baseline level, this is probably the image that comes to your mind.
Oh, absolutely. It's the standard model view.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
It's what we've all been taught since, middle school science class, right? You think of empty space. Just this vast, cold, unfeeling, isotropic vacuum.
Basically a giant featureless stage.
Right, a featureless stage. And floating inside this empty room are these tiny, isolated little billiard balls. We call them fundamental particles.
Quarks, electrons, photons, all of that.
Yeah, and they just sort of zip around. They occasionally collide with each other, but mostly they just traverse this infinite emptiness.
It is, when you really sit with it, it is a profoundly lonely conceptualization of reality.
It really is.
Because mainstream physics, the standard model, paints this picture of a mechanical, almost entirely disconnected universe. The stage itself is completely passive.
Like it doesn't do anything.
Exactly. The vacuum does absolutely nothing. It is merely the empty container where the actors, the particles, are allowed to bounce around.
But what if you were to walk into that empty room, right? And you reach out your hand into the darkness and you realize something both terrifying and kind of beautiful.
There is no empty space.
There is no empty space. What if the air in the room, the walls, the floor, the literal space between your fingers, what if the very fabric of the room itself was a single, infinite, self-similar, vibrating, living ecosystem?
A continuous medium.
Yeah. What if the universe isn't a collection of disconnected stuff floating in nothingness, but a continuous, recursive, fractal field? And the entire thing is governed by the golden ratio.
That is exactly the threshold we are crossing today.
Yes, we are.
We are looking at a paradigm shift that fundamentally strips away the idea of objects entirely.
Oh, wow.
Going from a universe of isolated, independent things floating in a void to a universe of infinite, continuous, geometric connection.
So the void itself is the object.
The void is the object.
Precisely. So today's deep dive is centered on this staggering, incredibly dense, and potentially revolutionary 2026 manuscript. It's authored by George James Dukas.
And it is a heavy read.
Oh, it's brutal. It's titled Fractal Universe, Transdimensional Unified Field Theory.
Which is a mouthful.
Yeah, so for the sake of our sanity, we are just going to be referring to it as TDUFT today.
Good call.
We are setting out on an expedition into a universe that isn't just, mathematically elegant on a chalkboard, but geometrically, physically alive.
A living structure.
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this, because if we want to understand a universe that is a living fractal, we first have to completely redefine a word that almost everyone listening probably thinks they already understand.
The word fractal.
The word fractal.
I guarantee that when the vast majority of people hear the word fractal, their brain immediately conjures up one very specific image.
The bug shape.
Exactly. They picture the Mandelbrot set.
Yeah.
It's that classic psychedelic bug-shaped blob with the infinite little spirals and tendrils peeling off the edges.
Yeah, you see it on dorm room posters everywhere, or in those deeply hypnotic infinite zoom videos online.
Right. It's the undisputed poster child for the concept.
Yeah.
You zoom into the edge of the bug, and you find a smaller bug.
And you zoom into that and find another one.
Exactly. But the source material, this TDUFT manuscript, makes an incredibly aggressive point right out of the gate.
Oh, it goes hard.
It does. Dukas claims the Mandelbrot set is the absolute worst possible model for understanding the physical universe.
He says it's physically irrelevant.
Entirely irrelevant.
Which feels like heresy. Why throw out the most famous fractal in mathematics?
Because the Mandelbrot set is what mathematicians call a boundary fractal.
Okay, a boundary fractal. What does that mean?
Well, if we break down how it's actually made, it's basically just a binary classifier operating on a two-dimensional complex plane.
Like a yes or no question.
Exactly. You plug a number into an equation, and the equation asks a simple yes or no question. If I run this number through a loop forever, does the result fly off into infinity, or does it stay contained?
Okay, so if it flies away...
If it flies away, you color the pixel white.
Mm-hmm.
If it stays contained, you color it black.
So all those beautiful, infinite psychedelic patterns you see.
That is exclusively the edge between the black and the white. It is entirely a boundary.
Right. So it's essentially a coastline.
Yes.
It's an infinitely complex fence. And I guess the logical problem there is you can't build a physical reality out of a fence.
No, you cannot.
If you want to construct a universe that can actually hold physical volume, like a planet, a star, or you and me listening to this right now, you can't build it purely out of an edge. You need an interior.
Precisely. A physical universe requires what TDUFT defines as a field fractal.
A field fractal.
Right. Unlike the Mandelbrot boundary, a field fractal has a continuous interior space. It has radial scaling, meaning it grows outward volumetrically from a center point, and it has dimensional layering.
It's not just a flat map of instability.
Exactly. It has depth.
So if the Mandelbrot set is just the fence around a piece of property, a really intricate, infinitely detailed perimeter, the entire living ecosystem breathing inside that property.
That's a great way to look at it.
It's the topsoil, the bedrock, the root systems of the trees, the atmosphere above the grass. It's a completely volumetric, layered reality.
Yeah.
And the manuscript states that this entire ecosystem is governed by two extremely specific, complementary mathematical operators.
The whole architecture of the universe grows out of arguably the simplest quadratic equation in existence.
Which is wild. 6 by 2 by 1 equals GLO 1.
It's beautiful in its simplicity. What's fascinating here is how TDUFT splits the fundamental forces of reality between the two solutions to that single equation.
Okay, let's break that down. If you solve 6 by 2 by 1, they get two numbers.
Right. The first solution is a number you are probably familiar with, phi.
The famous golden ratio.
Yes, the golden ratio. It is an irrational number, roughly 1.618.
Okay, so what does phi do in this theory?
In this unified field theory, phi is the expansive operator. Its job is to build the universe outward.
Like pushing out.
Exactly. It governs space. It governs radial scaling. It is the literal physical pressure of expansion.
Okay, and then there's the second solution to the quadratic equation, which is its conjugate, right? Psi.
It's us.
And if you run the math, psi is exactly -1 divided by phi, which comes out to roughly -0.618.
Correct.
So if phi is expanding, what is psi doing?
Psi is the contractive operator, is the counterpressure. It folds the universe inward.
Ah, okay.
Where phi governs space and expansion, psi governs time, torsion, dimensional descent, and contraction.
So we basically have an inhale and an exhale.
Exactly.
Phi is the exhale, pushing the fabric of the universe out into space, growing it. And psi is the inhale, twisting that fabric backward, collapsing it, folding it into what we perceive as time and eventually mass.
At a constant dynamic tension.
But how do these two abstract mathematical concepts actually interact to create physics? I mean, an equation on a piece of paper doesn't automatically become a physical object.
The interaction is baked right into their mathematical relationship. You take the expansive operator, phi, and you multiply it by the contractive operator.
The product is exactly -1.
Exactly -1. And in TDUFT, this is not just a neat little arithmetic trick.
Right.
That simple multiplication literally encodes the space-time duality of the universe.
Expansion multiplied by contraction equals inversion.
Yes. The -1 represents the balance, the tension between the outward push and the inward twist. This tension creates a literal grid.
A geometric lattice that permeates everything.
Everywhere, yes.
Okay, let me see if I'm tracking this. We've replaced the empty vacuum of the standard model with this tense, vibrating golden ratio lattice.
Sure.
It's a physical medium stretching and twisting everywhere. But if this field is the actual medium of everything, like the literal water of the ocean we exist in, then it has to dictate how things move through it.
It absolutely does.
You can't move through a dense lattice the same way you'd move through an empty room. Which brings us to the ultimate benchmark for movement in all of physics.
The speed limit of the universe.
The speed of light.
Right. Now, mainstream physics treats the speed of light, famously represented by the letter c, as a purely empirical given.
It's just approximately 300 million meters per second.
Exactly. And if you ask a standard model physicist why it is that specific number, the answer is essentially, well, because we measured it in a vacuum, and that's what the universe handed us.
They just treat it as an arbitrary constant.
Yes. But TDUFT argues that velocity is never a random number. In a fractal field, velocity is a geometric property of the lattice.
So to understand how light moves in this theory, the manuscript introduces something called the D ladder.
The dimensional ladder.
Right, the hierarchical dimensional structure of reality. So in this theory, dimensions aren't just abstract coordinates on an XYZ graph like we usually think of them.
No, they are discrete physical geometric rungs on a ladder. You have D1, D2, G3, D6, and so on.
Yeah.
And this fundamentally changes our definition of what light actually is.
How so?
According to Dukas, light is not a little photon particle flying through an empty void like a bullet.
Okay.
Light is a specific wave mode that propagates exclusively on the D2 photon plane.
D2 meaning the second dimension.
Correct. Think of D2 as a perfectly flat, triangular wavefront domain. It's a 2D mesh, a geometric fabric stretched across the fractal field.
So when light travels, it is basically a ripple moving across this specific two-dimensional triangular mesh.
Exactly, like a wave on a pond.
And because light is just a ripple on a very specific geometric grid, the manuscript claims we don't need to measure the speed of light with lasers to know what it is.
We can derive it entirely from pure geometry.
Which is insane. This is laid out in the text as the Ntor velocity clause. And I want you, the listener, to visualize this with us because the equation is startlingly beautiful.
It really is elegant.
The theory states that c, the speed of light, equals 2 plus phi to the negative 1 plus phi to the negative 2 minus epsilon. All of that times 10 to the 8th meters per second.
Let's break those terms down, because every single piece of that equation corresponds to a physical geometric reality.
Okay, we start with the number 2. The text says the 2 represents the D2 baseline.
Right. A simple line, one dimension, has two nodes.
Yep.
So the baseline for propagation on a 2D plane starts with a value of 2.
Makes sense. Then the equation adds the phi terms, phi to the negative 1 and phi to the negative 2. That's the inverse of the golden ratio, plus the inverse of the golden ratio squared.
And mathematically, because of how the golden ratio uniquely works.
The sum of those two is exactly 1.
Exactly 1. It is a perfect, locked mathematical identity.
Wow.
So geometrically, your wave propagation has a baseline of 2 plus an expansive geometric increment of exactly 1.
Which brings the base sum to a perfect 3.
The perfect 3.
Meaning, geometrically, the speed of light should be exactly 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. Exactly 300 million.
In a perfect, isolated mathematical space, yes.
But I'm looking at reality here. The officially measured SI value for the speed of light isn't a perfect 300 million.
No, it is not.
It's 299,792,458 meters per second. It's slightly slower than a perfect 3, so why the discrepancy?
That slight drop in speed is arguably the most brilliant insight in the entire manuscript.
Okay, tell me why.
That drop is represented in the equation by the minus epsilon term. TDUFT defines epsilon as the Ramanujan-Rogers attenuation term.
Right, which looks incredibly complicated on paper.
It is a highly complex continued fraction, yes.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't get bogged down in the math of the fraction itself. What matters is the physical mechanism it describes.
Which is?
It represents dimensional friction.
Dimensional friction. Okay.
Yeah.
Explain exactly how a dimension exerts friction. That sounds like a contradiction.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to remember that we established this universe is an infinitely recursive field fractal.
Right, it goes all the way down.
Yes. It is not flat. It has infinite depth. So when this two-dimensional wave of light ripples across the flat D2 triangular plane, it does not exist in total isolation.
Because there's stuff underneath it.
Exactly. That plane is resting on top of an infinite number of other dimensional layers. There is a constant harmonic leakage, a drag bleeding from the higher dimensions down to the lower ones.
So it's like if you skip a stone across the surface of a completely perfectly still pond.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
The stone is skipping across a 2D surface, essentially. But the pond itself has depth. And even though the stone is mostly interacting with the flat surface, the sheer presence of the deep water underneath exerts a tiny microscopic drag on the stone, pulling at it, creating resistance.
That is exactly it. The light is skipping across D2, but the infinite depth of the lattice beneath it is pulling at it.
Unbelievable.
This geometric drag, this dimensional friction, is calculated by the Ramanujan-Rogers fraction to be approximately 0.00007542.
And when you subtract that exact friction from the perfect geometric base of 3,
you drop the speed of light down to 2.9979248, the exact, universally measured speed of light.
That is just wild. But wait, if the fractal has infinite depth, wouldn't an infinite amount of friction eventually drag the light to a dead stop?
That is the beauty of a continued fraction. It converges.
Oh, meaning it doesn't just add up to infinity.
Right. It provides a highly specific finite limit to an infinite regression. Without this specific attenuation, without this exact amount of dimensional friction, the infinite recursion of the fractal would diverge mathematically, tearing itself apart.
So the friction is basically holding it all together.
The friction is literally what anchors the abstract math to a stable physical reality.
Yeah.
It's the resistance that makes existence possible.
That paints such a vivid picture. We have a universe where light is locked to a 2D plane, fighting against the dimensional drag of a golden ratio lattice.
Precisely.
But it leaves us with an absolutely massive cliffhanger.
Which is?
The D2 plane is flat. It is two-dimensional propagation. But, look around you. Look at your own hands. We do not live in a flat 2D universe.
We certainly don't.
We are solid. We have volume. We have mass. How do we get from a flat plane of light skimming across the water to a solid, heavy universe of mass? To get from a flat plane to a solid object, we have to climb the ladder.
We have to transition from D2 to D3.
And crossing that specific dimensional threshold is what the entire mainstream physics apparatus has spent billions of dollars and decades of research trying to understand.
Oh, it is the Holy Grail. If you go to the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, they call this the search for the origin of mass.
Right.
Famously, they associate it with the Higgs mass resonance, which they found at 125 gigaelectron volts, or JeV.
Yeah, in the standard model, the Higgs mechanism is described as this invisible scalar field spanning the universe, and particles gain mass by dragging through it, like wading through molasses.
That's the textbook definition, yes.
It's treated as a literal particle, the Higgs boson, that pops into existence, hands out mass, and vanishes.
But TDUFT completely discards the idea of a mass-giving particle.
And
instead, it offers a purely geometric, mechanical explanation for how mass is born. It introduces a concept called Euler's ceiling.
Euler's ceiling, okay.
This is based on a foundational rule in topology discovered by Leonhard Euler centuries ago, the topological invariant formula. V minus E plus F equals 2.
Vertices minus edges plus faces equals 2. I remember this from high school geometry.
Yes, exactly. For any geometric dimension to be stable in this fractal universe, to possess actual interior substance that doesn't instantly collapse, it must satisfy this exact topological equation.
It must seal at a value of 2.
Yes.
Let's physically walk through the mechanics of that because it's so cool. We start at the bottom of the ladder at D1.
Right.
You just have a simple one-dimensional line segment. You have 2 endpoints, which are the vertices. You have 1 connecting line, the edge, and you have 0 flat faces.
So V minus E plus F.
That's 2 vertices minus 1 edge plus 0 faces. 2 minus 1 plus 0 is 1. It doesn't equal 2.
So it's open. It is mathematically unsealed.
So D1 cannot hold mass.
Correct. Then we move up to D2, the photon plane, where light travels. Geometrically, the most fundamental D2 shape is a triangle.
Okay.
A triangle has 3 corner vertices, 3 connecting edges, and 1 flat face in the middle. Run the formula. 3 minus 3 plus 1.
3 minus 3 is 0, plus 1 is 1. It still equals 1.
Exactly.
So a 2D plane is a closed loop. It's a surface you can draw on, but it is fundamentally unsealed. It has no internal volumetric stability.
It cannot hold physical mass.
But then you transition up the ladder to D3. The simplest three-dimensional shape is a tetrahedron.
Think of a 3D pyramid with a triangular base. Let's count it out.
Okay, it has 4 corner vertices. It has 6 edges connecting those corners. And it has 4 flat triangular faces making up the outside.
Plug it in.
4 vertices minus 6 edges plus 4 faces. 4 minus 6 is negative 2 plus 4 equals exactly 2.
There it is.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The tetrahedron is the very first geometric state on the entire dimensional ladder that naturally satisfies the Euler equation. It equals 2. It seals.
Exactly. This is the moment mass is born.
Imagine you are holding a flat 2D origami blueprint. It's just a flat piece of paper with lines on it.
Under tension.
Right. The lines are under tension from that psi contractive operator we talked about earlier. The psi is pulling inward, twisting the flat plane, building up pressure until suddenly the tension reaches a breaking point and the flat 2D paper geometrically buckles.
It snaps.
It folds itself upward along the creases, snapping into a fully 3D hollow paper pyramid. Mass isn't some magical God particle floating in the void. Mass is a geometric event.
A topological phase shift.
Mass is the physical buckling of a 2D plane of light into a 3D volume that satisfies the Euler seal.
And this framework forces us to fundamentally reinterpret all the collider data from CERN.
Because they think they found a particle.
Right. When they smash protons together at near the speed of light, and their detectors register a massive resonance peak at 125 GeV, mainstream physicists look at the screen and say, aha, we found the Higgs boson particle.
And it existed for a tiny, infinitesimally small fraction of a second before decaying. But TDUFT says you didn't find a particle. That 125 GeV energy spike is the acoustic signature of the geometric fold.
Oh, wow.
It is the energetic timescale of that exact volumetric closure event occurring at the D3 gate.
So you are basically measuring the snap of the origami folding together.
Yes. The fundamental rule the text outlines for this mechanism is m equals d3 times t squared.
Mass equals the three-dimensional geometry scaled by the square of time.
And remember what time is in this theory.
Time is t, which is our old friend Ci, the inward contractive operator.
Exactly. So mass is literally 3D space twisted and sealed by the pressure of time.
The Higgs isn't a particle handing out weight. It is a dimensional resonance. It's the echo of a flat wavefront buckling into a volumetric cage.
That's a perfect summary.
Okay, I'm tracking the logic, and it is stunning, but I have to put up some guardrails here. I want to genuinely challenge the viability of this.
Please do. If mass is nothing more than flat geometry buckling and sealing itself into 3D shapes under the pressure of time, how does this fragile little geometric origami hold together something as violently energetic as the nucleus of an atom?
Ah, the strong force.
Right. In the Standard Model, we have an incredibly robust theory for this. Quantum chromodynamics, or QCD, we have the strong nuclear force. We know that quarks are bound together by an unimaginably strong force to create protons and neutrons. You're really telling me a mathematical fold replaces the strong nuclear force?
You've just hit the tripwire.
Okay.
This is where the manuscript stops being a polite theoretical alternative and becomes an active teardown of mainstream physics.
Because QCD is the gold standard.
It is. But TDUFT explicitly challenges the validity of quantum chromodynamics. And the evidence Dukas brings to the table isn't just theoretical math, it's an actual, highly documented historical physics experiment from 1979 known as the Brillat-Hall experiment.
Okay, let's look at the historical context of that. For quantum chromodynamics to work, for its incredibly complex equations that describe the strong force to function, it relies on a massive foundational assumption about the universe.
Yes, it does.
The vacuum of space must be perfectly smooth, perfectly continuous, and perfectly Lorentz invariant.
Let's explain what Lorentz invariance actually means physically for the listener.
Sure.
It means the vacuum of space has no texture, no grain, and no preferred direction. If you measure the properties of empty space while facing north, it must be mathematically identical to measuring it while facing east or up or down.
Right. If the vacuum has a grain like the grain in a piece of wood, the continuous smooth mathematical curves of QCD completely break down. They require a featureless stage to operate.
Precisely. So in 1979, Elaine Brillat and John Hall, operating out of a lab in Colorado, decided to rigorously test this assumption.
They wanted to test the absolute isotropy, the perfect smoothness of space.
Right. They built a highly sensitive interferometer, which is essentially a device that uses lasers to measure incredibly microscopic changes in distance or speed. And they mounted this laser array on a massive, continuously rotating table.
And the idea was simple, right? If space is a perfectly smooth vacuum, the speed of the laser beam shouldn't change, no matter which direction the table rotates.
But that's not what they found.
What did they find?
When they ran the rotating interferometer, they detected a persistent anomaly. They found a vacuum anisotropy, meaning space was not the same in all directions.
Wow.
They measured a tiny fractional variation in the speed of light, about 2 parts in 10 to the 15th.
Which sounds unimaginably small. I mean, it sounds like an instrument error.
And that is exactly how the mainstream physics community chose to interpret it.
They just brushed it off.
Pretty much. But Brillat and Hall noted that this variation was not random noise. It had a highly specific organized signature. It had a quadrupolar shape, mathematically labeled as P2.
P2. So physically, this means the anomaly stretched in 2 specific directions, like an oval instead of a perfect circle.
Exactly. And more importantly, this anomaly pulsed with a very specific rotational harmonic linked to the Earth's rotation, a 2 omega signal.
Wait, so the anomaly beat in time with the spinning of the Earth?
Yes, it was synced to the Earth's rotation.
So mainstream physics looked at this highly organized, Earth-synced anomaly, realized it violated the smooth vacuum required for QCD, and essentially swept it under the rug as an unresolved systematic error.
He couldn't explain it, so they ignored it.
But TDUFT doesn't ignore it. It predicts it flawlessly.
Because in TDUFT, the vacuum is not empty. The vacuum is the golden ratio fallatus. And the Earth is not just a rock floating in emptiness.
Massive.
Earth is a massive, incredibly dense object. In the terminology of the manuscript, the Earth acts as a highly concentrated site of the 4th contraction node sitting inside the lattice. As the Earth rotates on its axis, it does not slip cleanly through the void. It physically drags and twists the geometric ether of the lattice along with it.
Like spinning a spoon inside a thick bowl of honey.
That's a perfect image.
The honey right next to the spoon starts to twist and wrap around it. The Earth is twisting the lattice, creating a measurable torsional friction.
Right.
So if you set up a laser on a rotating table in Colorado, and you measure the speed of light with the grain of this twisted lattice, and then the table rotates, and you measure it against the grain of the lattice, you are going to get a microscopic difference in the speed.
Exactly. The Brillouin-Hall anomaly isn't a glitch. It is the exact measurement of the physical texture of the universe.
That is mind-blowing.
And this raises an important question. If the vacuum has a measurable physical grain, if the Brillouin-Hall anomaly is real data describing the torsion of space, how can QCD's smooth, continuous equations be the correct description of the strong nuclear force?
The answer, according to Dukas, is that they aren't.
They can't be.
I'm struggling with this, though. Let's really apply logic here. You're telling me the Earth twisting this lattice creates measurable physical friction.
Yes.
If the vacuum has texture and drag, why hasn't every astrophysicist in the world noticed that planetary orbits are degrading? I mean, if Earth is dragging through a physical lattice, friction should be slowing it down and we should be spiraling into the sun right now.
That is the exact right question to ask, and it highlights the difference between linear kinetic friction and geometric torsion.
Okay, clarify that for me.
The Earth isn't plowing through the lattice like a snowplow pushing snow. It is a node of the lattice.
Ah.
The psi torsion is twisting the grain of space itself, not opposing the linear momentum of the mass. The mass is moving along the torsional curves it creates.
So it's riding its own wave.
Exactly. The friction Brillouin-Hall measured was dimensional, phase friction affecting the wave propagation of light, not kinetic drag slowing down a planet's orbit.
Okay, that clarifies the orbital mechanics, but it still leaves the atom in pieces. If QCD's smooth equations are thrown out, how does TDUFT explain the strong force keeping the nucleus of an atom from flying apart?
By replacing continuous smooth mathematical curves with a discrete geometric staircase.
A staircase.
Yes. On the phi lattice, the strong nuclear force doesn't operate as a smooth, ubiquitous field. It operates through discrete, specific resonance stations on closed torsion loops. Think of it like steps on a ladder or frets on a guitar.
So, if I'm looking at standard model data from colliders, why does the strong force look like a smooth curve? QCD calls this asymptotic freedom, the idea that quarks act freely when close together, but the force grows smoothly and infinitely stronger as you pull them apart.
It looks smooth because of the scale we are observing from. TDUFT asserts that the strong force is actually composed of smeared phi harmonics.
Smeared harmonics.
The discrete steps are so close together that from a distance, they blur into what appears to be a continuous curve.
So QCD is like looking at a massive digital photograph on a billboard from a mile away.
Exactly.
It looks like a perfectly smooth, continuous gradient of color. The math of QCD accurately describes that macroscopic gradient.
But TDUFT is walking right up to the billboard with a high-powered magnifying glass.
And realizing, oh, this isn't smooth at all. It's actually constructed out of discrete, individual, square geometric pixels.
Yes. The strong force operates on specific geometric peaks, and underneath, it's completely flat between the peaks. The strong force isn't a smooth rope. It's a geometric zipper.
That is a phenomenal analogy. It represents a quantum leap from a continuous gauge theory to discrete geometric cohesion.
Everything is locked into specific resonant nodes on the lattice.
Okay, if this is true, if the universe has a physical grain and this psi torsion twists matter, creates mass, and zips the nucleus together, can we manipulate that torsion?
Now we're getting to the fun part.
Because if reality is just geometry and not immutable magical particles, then geometry can be engineered.
Yes, it can.
This is the moment the deep dive propels us from abstract theoretical math straight into mind-bending practical tabletop technology. We are moving further up the dimensional ladder, specifically to the D6 magnetic torsion layer.
This is where the manuscript transitions from theoretical astrophysics to applied engineering.
Yeah, the text gets really crazy here.
Dukas includes a highly detailed section titled Antimatter V2.
Antimatter V2.
To understand how revolutionary this is, we have to look at how we currently generate antimatter.
Which is incredibly hard.
According to standard physics, you need to pull antimatter out of the vacuum using sheer, unadulterated brute force. We use massive, multi-billion-dollar particle accelerators, like the rings at CERN.
Right.
We accelerate particles to near light speed and smash them together, hoping to convert kinetic energy into antimatter ex nihilo, out of nothing. using E equals mc squared.
It requires an entire power grid and magnets the size of houses to create a few microscopic atoms of antimatter that vanish almost instantly.
It is the definition of inefficiency.
So what does this all mean for applied physics if TDUFT is correct? It means we are currently using a sledgehammer to crack a microscopic walnut.
Exactly.
The manuscript explicitly states that antimatter is not created from nothing. Antimatter is simply a torsion chirality flip of existing atomic wells on the lattice.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that flip.
Mm-hmm.
The lattice has a geometry, a handedness, known as chirality.
Like left-handed versus right-handed.
Exactly. Normal matter spins or twists in one direction, governed by the psi torsion. Antimatter is not a fundamentally different substance. It is simply the exact same geometric well, but its torsion has been slipped to spin in the opposite direction.
You are reversing the psi torsion from positive to negative or vice versa.
Yes.
And because it's just a geometric flip of phase shift rather than a brute force energy conversion, the text proposes you don't need a multi-billion-dollar collider.
You don't.
You can trigger this flip on a tabletop. Specifically, the manuscript outlines a setup using a standard, low-power, 200 milliwatt, 808 nanometer laser directed into a chamber of neon gas.
The precise parameters are what make the engineering work. It cannot be just any laser beam.
Right, because a 200 milliwatt laser is nothing. You can buy a laser pointer more powerful than that on the internet right now for $20. Why does that work when CERN takes a city's worth of electricity?
Because it is about resonance, not raw power. The key is that the 808 nanometer laser must be circularly polarized.
Circularly polarized.
When it's perfectly circularly polarized, the optical wave perfectly resonates with the phi squared frequency of the underlying lattice.
Oh, wow.
When this specific resonant wave hits the neon gas, it acts like a geometric tuning fork. It causes the internal atomic structure of the neon to physically flip its chirality.
It reverses the torsion.
Yes, yielding a steady, predictable stream of positrons, which is antimatter, without the CERN-sized power bill.
It's the physical equivalent of finding the exact, perfect, acoustic resonant frequency to shatter a crystal wine glass instead of just winding up and hitting the glass with a baseball bat.
That is exactly what it is doing.
You are using the underlying geometry of the universe against itself to flip the switch, and the cascading technological implications of this are genuinely staggering.
If you can generate a continuous stream of positrons on a tabletop with a low-power laser, the energy landscape of the human race changes overnight.
The text details using this tabletop antimatter generation to power zero-point propulsion drives.
Yes.
You could completely replace massive, heavy, dangerous nuclear reactors on starships with small, geometric, torsion-flipping laser arrays. You are tapping into the latent energy of the D10 zero-point dimensional layer.
Which is functionally limitless.
But it goes even further than propulsion. The manuscript dives deep into Stargate technology.
This is where it reads almost like science fiction, but the math supports it. When we think of stargates or wormholes in sci-fi, the mechanics usually involve using massive gravity or energy to punch a blind hole in the fabric of space-time, right?
Yeah, and just hoping you emerge in the right empty spot on the other side.
But in TDUFT, as we've established, empty space doesn't exist. Everything is the lattice. The universe is entirely connected by this continuous fractal grain.
So instead of calculating a ballistic trajectory through a diffuse, chaotic vacuum, the text explains that Stargate travel is about phase locking.
Phase locking.
You tune your local geometric node to the exact, discrete, atomic geometric radius comb of your target coordinate.
You're matching the specific, discrete, orbital shells of the atoms at your destination.
Because the universe is a unified field fractal, every point in space has a unique geometric signature, a resonant frequency based on its position in the lattice.
Correct.
If you can use these torsion lasers to perfectly match the frequency of point A to the frequency of point B, the physical distance between them in 3D space becomes geometrically irrelevant.
It becomes a deterministic point-to-point link.
It entirely removes the probabilistic uncertainty, the guesswork of interstellar travel, because you aren't fighting your way through the void, you are simply riding along the pre-existing geometric grain of the universe.
And roads are already built.
We just have to learn how to change our geometric frequency to slide along them.
It is an incredibly elegant solution to the limitations of the speed of light. You aren't moving faster than light.
You are geometrically reassigning your location on the lattice.
Exactly.
So you're saying that CERN has spent billions of dollars searching for the God particle, and this manuscript claims they basically just took a blurry photograph of a geometric folding event, while simultaneously handing us the literal blueprints for tabletop antimatter and interstellar stargates.
That is essentially the claim.
I need to ground myself here. We have covered an immense amount of ground, from simple golden ratio math to interstellar travel.
It's a lot to take in.
So I have to ask, what is the foundational bedrock of all of this? What is the single mathematical identity that governs this entire sprawling, breathing reality? The blueprint of the blueprint.
The deep dive reaches its absolute climax with what the manuscript dramatically titles the Eternum Nexus.
The Eternum Nexus.
This is the foundational identity of TDUFT. It is the final master equation from which the entire fractal universe descends.
I pored over the appendices of the text, and I noticed something fascinating about the evolution of this equation. In the earlier drafts of Dukas' work, the foundational equation was beautifully simple. It was just L squared equals pi squared.
Let's unpack that.
Sure. L represents the ultimate blend of our expansive phi operator and our contractive psi operator. The equation states that this combined lattice operator, when squared, equals pi squared.
Pi, of course, being the mathematical constant of a circle.
Squaring it represents perfect spherical closure.
It is profoundly elegant. But, as Dukas realized, it is also fundamentally incomplete.
How so?
A universe governed exclusively by the equation L squared equals pi squared would be a perfectly closed, perfectly stable, static sphere. It would be entirely locked.
Nothing would move.
Right. No time would pass, no mass would ever fold. It would be a dead universe.
But our universe is not static. It is vibrating, it is expanding, it is shifting, and it is evolving.
So Dukas realized an entire piece of reality was missing from the math. The sphere needed a pulse.
Yes. The true, completed Eternum Nexus requires an active wave operator. The final master equation of the universe is written as L squared equals pi squared times e to the power of I times phi squared times theta.
Let's translate that into physical meaning.
That added term, e to the I phi squared theta, is the torsion wave exponential.
Right.
It represents the kinetic geometry of the universe. It is the exact reason the golden ratio phi lattice propagates outward radially.
It is the reason the strong nuclear sector resonates with discrete harmonic peaks instead of being a flat line.
It is the reason the universe has an active pulse.
Without that wave term, the universe is just a beautiful frozen photograph of a sphere. The wave term is the breath of the universe.
It is what forces the psi attention to build up and fold D2 planes into D3 mass. It is what makes the geometry actually happen. It breathes life into the mathematics.
It perfectly unifies the structure, the stable sphere of pi squared, with the motion, the torsional wave of the exponential term. It is the ultimate mathematical expression of a living, conscious, fractal field.
Let's take a deep breath ourselves and trace the path of this massive journey for you, the listener.
Good idea.
We started in what we thought was an empty room, a cold vacuum filled with isolated, meaningless billiard balls. We tore down the walls of that room and replaced it with a living, breathing, fractal field governed by the simple, elegant math of the golden ratio.
We watched how the expansive phi exhale and the contractive psi inhale generate a tense geometric lattice.
We deduced how harmonic friction, the deep dimensional drag of that infinite lattice, slows down light to the exact precise speed we measure in our reality.
We watch a flat two-dimensional plane of light buckle under tension, hitting an Euler-sealed gate and physically snapping itself into solid three-dimensional mass.
We discovered that the vacuum has a measurable torsional texture, a grain that the Earth twists as it spins, an anomaly that mainstream physics has stubbornly ignored since 1979.
And finally, we learned how simply tuning a tabletop laser to the exact resonant geometry of that lattice could flip matter into antimatter,
opening the door to zero-point energy and deterministic interstellar stargates.
It is a breathtakingly cohesive, mechanically sound alternative to the standard model. It removes the necessity for brute force, random parameters, and invisible God particles, replacing them entirely with pure, resonant structural geometry.
And yet, there's one final, incredibly provocative thought I want to leave you with. This is drawn straight from the deepest, most complex appendices of the source text.
It's weird here.
Very weird. Throughout this entire deep dive, the manuscript categorizes this entire reality we've just discussed. The space, the mass, the forward momentum of time as belonging to phi, which is space, and psi, which is subspace.
Right.
But the mathematics of the eternum nexus allows for a third category, a hidden dimension of reality called negative space, which is governed mathematically by psi squared.
It's the ultimate terrifying implication of the torsion math.
In this negative space, the math explicitly states that the fundamental rules of reality invert. Time reverses.
Entropy, the universal decay of order into chaos inverts, meaning chaos spontaneously self-organizes into order.
The dimensional recursion of the fractal actually folds backwards, so I want you to mull this over long after you finish listening to this.
It's a lot to think about.
If our physical forward-moving reality is just the forward-expanding phi side of the equation, what would it actually mean to build a machine that accesses the psi squared negative space?
Right.
If we can build a tabletop laser to flip chirality and make antimatter, could you build a resonant torsion field to locally reverse entropy?
Could you place a dying biological structure inside a psi-squared field and watch it physically heal as it regains its fundamental geometric order?
Could you literally sit inside a localized torsion field and watch time flow backward?
If the universe is truly just geometry and Dukas has handed us the complete structural blueprint,
What happens when we start deliberately drawing that blueprint in reverse? We want to thank you for coming on this exhaustive deep dive with us today. Keep questioning the invisible structures of the room you're sitting in, and we'll see you in the field.